Ever feel like your company's big strategic plan is this like thing, happening way up there while your day-to-day work feels completely disconnected?
Yeah, you're definitely not alone.
Well, today we're diving into some research that offers a fresh perspective on employee engagement and strategy.
It might just flip your whole approach on its head.
Okay, bring it on. I'm ready.
So, what's often missing in this whole strategy execution puzzle
Yeah.
is a deeper understanding of the human element. It's less about perfectly crafted plans
Yeah.
and more about something that Ozrin Saliniscate,
Okay.
a researcher from the University of Vasa in Finland, calls reciprocity.
Okay. I'm intrigued,
Right.
but also a little lost reciprocity. Is this like some kind of corporate karma?
Corporate karma. I like that.
Explain it to me, and more importantly, to our listener who's probably nodding along right now.
Yeah, so think of it this way. Instead of the usual carrots and sticks approach to motivation,
Right.
imagine an organization that genuinely cares about what its employees care about.
Okay.
It's about creating a two-way street. Okay.
Where the organization supports individuals in reaching their aspirations. And in return, employees are more likely to commit to the organization's goals.
So it's less about top-down mandates and more about finding that sweet spot where individual goals and company strategy actually intersect.
Exactly.
I like it.
Silent Scout's research, which focused on a Finnish multinational corporation,
Okay.
found that when employees feel this sense of reciprocity,
Yeah.
they're far more likely to connect with and act on those big strategic goals.
This is already making me rethink how we approach things. It's like, forget the fancy mission statements and the performance metrics for a second. If you want people to truly buy into the week, you first need to show that you value the me.
That's a great way to put it.
Thanks.
And what makes this even more interesting is that Silent Scout's research went beyond Finland,
Okay.
looking at how reciprocity plays out in different cultures,
Well, interesting.
like Russia and India.
Okay, now I'm picturing a world map with all these different reciprocity styles. What did she find? Were there any surprises? Well, in Finland, there's a more formal relationship between individuals and organizations. While personal aspirations are important to Finnish employees, the research suggests they might not feel a strong sense of reciprocity with their organization compared to other cultures.
So maybe in those cultures, it takes a bit more effort on the organization's part to show that they're truly invested in their employees' individual success.
It's certainly something to consider. Now, contrast that with India,
Okay.
where Senlinskite found a dynamic that's almost like devotion. But here's the twist.
Okay.
The devotion wasn't necessarily directed at the organization itself or even the strategic plan.
Ollie.
It was all about the business leader.
So it's like if I believe in this leader, they genuinely care about me.
Yeah.
I'm all in on their vision. That's a powerful connection. What about Russia?
Russia presented a much more bureaucratic approach.
No?
Employees viewed strategy work as something managers did not, as something they actively participated in. However, they still craved reassurance from their managers that their daily tasks were connected to the overall strategy.
So even in a more hierarchical system, people still want that sense of purpose,
Right.
knowing that their work contributes to something larger.
Absolutely. And this is where things get really interesting for anyone working in global teams.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine trying to implement a single strategy across these vastly different cultures without understanding these nuances of reciprocity.
Yeah.
It's a recipe for disaster.
You're absolutely right. It's like you need a reciprocity translator to navigate those complexities. But before we dive into those global waters, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, this idea of personal commitments.
Yes.
Can you unpack that a bit more for our listener?
It's really about understanding what truly matters to your employees beyond just their job titles.
Okay.
What are their long-term goals, their passions outside of work, their family commitments?
Yeah.
When organizations acknowledge and support these individual needs, that's when you start to see real commitment in return.
So it's about seeing employees as whole people, not just workers showing up to do a task.
Yes.
It's about creating an environment where they feel supported and valued for who they are, not just what they produce.
Exactly. And this challenges the traditional top-down approach to strategy, where success is often measured by adherence to rigid systems and processes.
Right.
Soundscape found that just because employees might deviate from these formal structures
Okay.
doesn't automatically mean the strategy is failing. In fact, it might indicate adaptability and innovation.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
We're so conditioned to think that following the plan equals success.
Yeah.
But what if those deviations are actually signs of people finding creative solutions to problems? Maybe even coming up with better ways to achieve the strategic goals.
It's about recognizing what Silent Sky calls multiple truths within the organization.
Okay.
Different people will have different perspectives and approaches based on their roles, experiences, and interpretations of the strategy. And those diverse perspectives, if harnessed correctly, can actually lead to better outcomes.
That is blowing my mind a little. It's like saying, hey, there's not just one right way to do this. Embracing those different interpretations, those multiple truths, could actually be the key to unlocking greater engagement and ultimately greater success.
That's exactly what Silent Sky's research suggests.
Wow.
But before we get too carried away with all these exciting implications,
Yeah.
I think our listener might be curious about how she actually arrived at these conclusions.
Yeah. How'd she do it?
Her methodology was quite robust, wasn't it?
Tell us more.
Oh.
What did her research process look like? I'm guessing it wasn't just sitting in an office crunching numbers.
It was far from it. To get this rich, nuanced data,
Yeah.
Silent Sky embedded herself in the organization,
Okay.
conducting in-depth interviews with employees at all levels, from the top executives to those on the front lines.
Wow.
She wanted to understand how strategy was perceived and implemented from multiple viewpoints.
So it was about getting the full picture, not just the top-down view. Did she do anything else besides interviews?
She also analyzed a mountain of organizational documents,
Oh, wow.
strategic plans, internal communications performance reports,
Okay.
anything that could shed light on how the strategy was actually being put into practice.
It's like she was a detective,
Yeah,
piecing together clues from both conversations and written records.
that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And to round it all out, she also conducted observations within the organization, actually seeing how people were interacting and working together.
So she wasn't just relying on what people told her.
You know.
She was actually seeing it firsthand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's how she was able to develop those powerful conclusions about reciprocity, personal commitments, and the multiple truths that exist within an organization. It's not just theoretical, it's grounded in real-world observations.
Okay. I'm hooked. This deep dive is already shifting my whole perspective on employee engagement and strategy. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's take a pause here. We've laid the groundwork, explored some fascinating research, and I think our listener is primed for more. When we come back, let's talk about how all of this translates into actionable steps. How can organizations actually put these insights into practice?
I'm ready when you are. This is where it gets really exciting. Turning theory into action, creating a work environment that fosters both individual growth and organizational success.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the fascinating world of employee engagement and strategy. We've been unpacking some pretty revolutionary research from Oshry and Silent Sky, and I think our listener is ready to see how this translates into real-world action.
You're right. It's one thing to talk about reciprocity.
Yeah.
But how do organizations actually cultivate it? How do we move beyond theory and into practice?
Exactly. So let's get practical. Imagine you're leading a team and you're inspired by this idea of supporting your employees' personal aspirations. Where do you even begin?
It starts with a fundamental mindset shift.
Oh.
We need to stop viewing employees as just cogs in a machine and start recognizing them as individuals with their own unique goals and motivations.
So instead of just focusing on what they're doing for the company,
Yeah.
we also need to consider what the company can do for them.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's about creating a two-way street,
Right.
a relationship built on mutual support and trust.
Okay.
And that starts with truly understanding your employees.
Okay, so how do we actually do that?
Right.
Is this about going beyond the typical annual performance review?
Absolutely.
Are we talking about more frequent in-depth conversations?
It's about having regular open dialogues with your team members.
Yeah.
Not just about their tasks and performance, but about their hopes, dreams,
Right.
and what they ultimately want to achieve in life.
This is where a lot of managers might get uncomfortable.
Yeah,
It can feel intrusive or even inappropriate to delve into someone's personal life.
I understand that hesitation. But it's not about prying into their personal lives. It's about creating a space where they feel comfortable sharing their aspirations and knowing that their manager genuinely cares.
So it's about building that foundation of trust.
Yeah.
But let's say you've had these conversations, you understand your employees' aspirations. How do you then connect those personal goals to the organization's strategic objectives?
That's where the real magic happens.
No.
Once you have a clear understanding of what drives your employees, you can start to find ways to align their individual goals with the overall direction of the organization.
Can you give our listener an example of how this might play out in a real work setting?
Sure. Let's say you have a team member who's passionate about sustainability,
Okay.
and your company is looking to reduce its environmental footprint.
Yeah.
That's a perfect opportunity to create a win-win situation.
You could involve them in projects related to sustainability initiatives, allowing them to contribute their passion and expertise while simultaneously advancing the company's strategic goals.
Exactly. It's about finding those sweet spots where individual aspirations and organizational needs intersect. And remember, it's not just about words.
Right.
Organizations need to back up their commitment with action.
So it's one thing to say we support your development,
Yeah.
but it's another to actually provide the resources and opportunities that enable growth.
Precisely. This could involve providing training programs, mentorship opportunities, or even flexible work arrangements that allow employees to pursue their passions outside of work. It's about demonstrating that you're invested in their growth, not just their output.
This all sounds great in theory, but I think our listener might be wondering, what if my aspirations don't align perfectly with the company's strategic goals?
Right.
What happens then?
That's a valid question, and it's where things can get a bit more challenging.
Okay.
But even if there isn't perfect alignment, there's still a lot organizations can do to foster that sense of reciprocity.
So it's not about forcing a fit, but rather about finding ways to bridge the gap.
Exactly. It might involve helping employees develop new skills that are more aligned with the organization's needs. Or it might involve finding creative ways to support their passions, even if they're not directly related to their current role.
For example, if someone is passionate about writing and the company has an internal newsletter, you could encourage them to contribute articles or even take on editing responsibilities.
That's a great example. It's about being flexible and finding those win-win solutions that benefit both the individual and the organization.
Now, let's not forget about Silent Sky's concept of multiple truths. How does that play into this idea of fostering reciprocity and creating a more engaged workforce?
This is where things get really interesting. Embracing multiple truths means recognizing that different people will have different interpretations of the organization and its strategy. Instead of trying to impose a single correct view, we should encourage open dialogue and debate.
So instead of saying, this is the plan, follow it,
Right.
we're saying, let's have a conversation about this. Let's hear your perspective.
Exactly. It's about creating a culture of psychological safety where employees feel comfortable sharing their ideas, even if those ideas challenge the status quo.
This can be incredibly powerful, but it also requires a lot of trust and vulnerability from both sides.
You're absolutely right. But the potential rewards are immense.
Yeah.
When you create a space where people feel safe to speak their minds, you tap into a wellspring of creativity and innovation.
You're essentially saying, let's co-create this strategy together.
Right.
Let's combine our diverse perspectives and experiences to come up with the best possible solutions.
Precisely. And when employees feel like they're part of the process, when their voices are heard and their contributions are valued, they're far more likely to be engaged and committed to the organization's success.
I think this is a crucial point for our listener to grasp. Reciprocity isn't just about tangible benefits like training programs or promotions.
Right.
It's also about creating a work environment where employees feel respected, appreciated, and empowered to contribute their unique talents.
You've hit the nail on the head. And that's how you cultivate true engagement, not just compliance. It's about creating a culture where people feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves, something they can be proud to contribute to.
This has been incredibly insightful. We've covered a lot of ground, moving from the theoretical underpinnings of reciprocity to practical strategies for implementation. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to bring it back to the individual.
Let's do it. After all, this is all about empowering individuals to thrive within their organizations.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into employee engagement and strategy. We've been exploring this fascinating concept of reciprocity, the idea that organizations and individuals can achieve greater success by supporting each other's aspirations.
We've talked about how organizations can cultivate a culture of reciprocity.
Yeah.
And now it's time to shift our focus to you, the listener.
Okay.
What can you do as an individual to foster this sense of mutual commitment within your own work environment?
It's easy to sit back and say, well, my company should do this or my manager should do that. But as we've discussed, reciprocity is a two-way street. It requires effort from both sides.
Exactly. So let's say you're listening to this and thinking, I'm totally on board with this reciprocity thing.
Yeah.
I want to feel that sense of purpose and connection at work.
Right.
Where do you begin?
I think it starts with taking ownership of your own engagement.
Okay.
It's not about waiting for someone else to create the perfect environment for you. It's about being proactive and making things happen.
I couldn't agree more. And the first step, as cliche as it might sound, is self-reflection.
Okay.
Take some time to really think about what you want to achieve, both in your career and in your life as a whole. What are your passions? What are your values? What kind of impact do you want to make?
It's about getting clear on those personal aspirations we discussed earlier. What truly matters to you? What gets you excited to get out of bed in the morning?
Exactly. Once you have a solid understanding of your own goals and motivations, you can start to look for ways to connect those aspirations to your work and the overall direction of the organization.
So it's about finding those points of intersection where your individual passions and talents can contribute to the bigger picture.
Precisely. And this doesn't mean you have to find perfect alignment between every single personal goal and the company's strategy,
Right.
but there should be some overlap, some areas where you can see your contributions making a meaningful difference.
Okay, so let's say you've done the self-reflection, you identified those areas of overlap.
Yeah.
What's the next step? How do you actually bring this to life within your organization?
Communication is key. Don't be afraid to have open and honest conversations with your manager or leader about your aspirations and how you see yourself contributing to the company's success.
So don't just assume they know what you're thinking or what you want to achieve.
Yeah.
Be proactive and share your perspective.
Exactly. But remember, these conversations shouldn't be one-sided. Be prepared to listen to their perspective as well. Understand the organization's challenges, priorities, and how your role fits into the bigger picture.
It's about having a dialogue, a two-way exchange of information and ideas.
Precisely. And through these conversations, you can start to explore ways to align your individual goals with the organization's strategic direction. This might involve seeking out new opportunities within the company, taking on different responsibilities, or even proposing new initiatives that connect with your passions.
So don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone and embrace new challenges.
Absolutely. And remember, reciprocity is about mutual growth and development. It's not just about what the organization can do for you, but also what you can do for the organization.
This is where your own initiative and proactiveness come into play. Don't just wait for things to happen, make them happen.
I love that. Look for ways to contribute beyond your immediate job description. Volunteer for new projects, share your ideas, and be a proactive problem solver. And never underestimate the power of simply showing up with a positive attitude and a willingness to help.
Those seemingly small things can go a long way in building trust and fostering a sense of reciprocity within your team and the organization as a whole.
And remember, building reciprocity is an ongoing process, not a one-time event.
Right.
It requires continuous effort, communication, and a willingness to adapt and evolve along the way.
It's about nurturing that relationship, that two-way street of commitment over time. And if both sides are truly invested in creating that sense of reciprocity, the benefits can be immense.
Absolutely. For you, it could mean greater job satisfaction, a deeper sense of purpose, and the opportunity to achieve both your personal and professional goals.
And for the organization, it can lead to a more engaged and productive workforce, better alignment around strategic goals, and ultimately greater success.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with this thought. Reciprocity isn't just a nice-to-have, it's a must-have for organizations and individuals who want to thrive in today's complex and ever-changing world.
It's not something that just happens magically.
Yeah.
It requires conscious effort, open communication, and a commitment to mutual growth and development.
So take these insights, put them into action, and watch as that two-way street of commitment leads to a more fulfilling and impactful work experience.
That's it for our deep dive into employee engagement and strategy. We hope you've enjoyed the journey and come away with some valuable insights. Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.